Welcome into the Lucas and Lucas Show, episode number 3217. Been doing this for a long time alongside Lucas Frankel. As always, I'm Mike Lucas. Frankel sent out the show notes yesterday. He wanted to start with the NFC Championship game, but today, big news down in Houston. Deshaun Watson officially asking to be traded even after the hiring of a new head coach. So, Frank, the Jets are one of his reported preferred destinations. Is it worth giving up this year's first, next year's first, Sam Darnold, another first, and possibly more for Deshaun Watson?
He's worth whatever they want. I would give them. I mean, I was. You don't see quarterbacks of this caliber in their prime become available, and the Jets, since Joe Namath retired, since Joe Namath won the Super Bowl, they've been searching for a guy like Deshaun Watson who can come in that has a pedigree of being an elite NFL quarterback, despite what happened last year. The dude is, in my opinion, one of the five to seven best quarterbacks in the sport. And if you have the opportunity to get him, you move hell, heaven, and earth, and you get it done. Just what I don't understand is what is the appeal? Because Watson can control where he wants to go. What is the appeal with the Jets? I mean, listen, they do have the ability. They do have cap space, and if they were in my dream scenario, I'll just say this right now, is trade for Watson, sign Allen Robinson, draft Najee Harris. Because if you do those three things, then you have transformed your offense into an elite group of playmakers in the rushing attack, in the receiving game, because you got Robinson, Mims, Crowder as your receivers. That all of a sudden turns into an incredible group of playmakers to throw the ball to. And then Najee Harris he may not happen instantaneously, but I think that he can come in from day one and be an impact running back. Something they haven't had. I mean, Le'Veon Bell was a complete bust. The Chiefs don't even need him. I'd be shocked if he was even active for the Super Bowl. So that's what I would do for the Jets. But from Watson's standpoint, as presently constituted, like, why would you want to play for the Johnson family and go into a dysfunctional place that you were just in? The grass isn't always greener on the other side. Listen. I support the Jets, and I hope that one day they will be able to be an elite team again. But Deshaun Watson, like, get it through your head. Like, going to the Jets isn't the solution here, or maybe it's not the solution that you think it is. So just be careful what you wish for, Deshaun. That's all I got to say about that.
I want to respond to 3 points you made, and I'll ask you where you want to start. Do you want to start on Deshaun Watson, the player, going to the Jets, or I forgot the other one. So you want to start with going to the Jets or Deshaun Watson as a player? Where should I start?
I think we're pretty like even on where we stand on Deshaun Watson as a player. I mean, he's a great player. What more is there to say about it?
I don't think he's even reached his full potential yet. I mean, he's 25 years old. The dude is still young, and you look at quarterbacks around the league, even the best of the best, Brady, Rodgers, Manning. It took them till their late 20s, early 30s to reach their peak, prime, golden years. Now, Brady has extended that beyond anyone's wildest belief, but for most quarterbacks, it's that early 30s, late 20s. Watson isn't even there yet. So I'm actually with you. Usually, I don't agree with trading your entire future for one player, but in this case, you have a quarterback, the most important position on the field, pre-prime, and his pre-prime is already top 5 good. You do it. And you can argue it's too much. It's not too much for a game changer like Deshaun Watson. Now, as far as going to the Jets versus some other teams, none of the teams on his preferred list right now are perfect situations. So Miami's not a perfect situation.
Well, right, so it's Miami, the Jets. What are the other preferred teams that you're hearing?
Just those two. But also you hear rumblings that like the 49ers could put together a package, the Broncos, like, and we'll get to that in a second. None of them are perfect scenarios, and the grass isn't always greener, like you said. It's just burnt in different places. So he goes from Houston.
Are if he were to go to the 49ers, they would become probably the favorites to win that conference.
I think if he goes, he'll never go to the Colts, but the Colts need a quarterback.
Don't even bring up the Colts are irrelevant.
I'm just saying, like, he could go to any team.
Hang on. The Texans will never trade in within their division.
I agree, but I'm saying you could say Deshaun Watson goes to this team and he's immediately better. The 49ers don't have the same assets to give Houston back for Deshaun Watson. So, he can't go to the Colts because they're in the same division. It's not like the Niners have a package that's better than the Jets or the Dolphins.
But so
you can put Deshaun Watson on 24 teams in the league, and they immediately become significantly better. But he's going to go, if he's looking at the Jets, he already does not like Cal McNair, the owner of the Texans, for the reasons that stem from believing he's racist to not handling certain situations properly. Well, Woody Johnson, I mean, he comes with his own baggage, Frank. We all know that he's closely tied to the Trump campaign and Donald Trump, which has had its fair share of issues on social issues. We'll just leave it at that. I don't have to dig too deep in it, but the grass isn't always greener. And why would he want to play for the Jets? Because New York City is a better market than Houston. He's sick of Houston. He wants to get out. But let's not pretend that New York is the perfect, and the Jets is the perfect destination to solve all his world issues in one move.
And the biggest thing about Woody Johnson that he needs to understand is that Woody Johnson, owning the Jets is just like, it's a hobby for him. It's almost, he owns the team. He can brag to his friends and family about it. But I don't think he cares, because if he really cared, he would have stayed and he would have been involved in decision making and not run to be in the politics that the first chance that he got. I just pray that Deshaun Watson is careful what he wishes for. Let's go on to the Yankees next. I guess recap on Watson real quick. Gun to your head right now. How does this end for Deshaun Watson before the season starts?
He ends up in Miami.
I think that I want to be shocked if he stayed, but we'll see how it goes.
I think he would be. I would be shocked if he stayed, just because now he's seen the head coach, he's seen the GM. What else can you do to convince him? And he seems like a dude that has strong principles, and he already signed that $164 million contract. Like, money's not an issue for him. So I don't think he's too worried about losing a couple of game checks like Le'Veon Bell might have been a couple of years back. So yeah, gun to my head, Miami.
That would be devastating to the Jets. Let's go to the Yankees. I mean, I've been just like thinking about this over the past few days, and I heard someone make a comment, and it just like was like, man, you're right. The Yankees right now have had one of the single worst off seasons in the history of the franchise. They are operating like the Kansas City freaking Royals, and it is an absolute disgrace. Here are the moves that they made. All right, they re-signed LeMahieu. That was the one thing they sort of had to do. They signed Corey Kluber. They acquired Jamison Taillon from the Pirates. They traded away Adam Ottavino, and Masahiro Tanaka went back to Japan. That was their offseason. Corey Kluber and Jamison Taillon have pitched a grand total of around 72 innings combined over the last 2 years. Kluber's 36, Taillon's 37. He's coming back from his second Tommy John surgery. They are basically banking on 40% of their starting rotation that
you can't bank on,
and that has just no track record of being able to stay healthy of late and be a consistent, reliable performer in your starting rotation. And they just let Tanaka go. And it's just disgusting that these are supposed to be the New York freaking Yankees. You're supposed to go out there and make the best moves possible. And yeah, I know that there are financial circumstances going on, but these moves that Cashman is making are indefensible. They are going to blow through their bullpen, and those guys are going to be so worn down and so worn out by May 1st. They're all going to be done and they'll be so ineffective, and it's going to be a complete debacle. You obviously have Jordan Montgomery, David Garcia, Domingo Germán, but none of those guys are innings eaters. They have no one who you can go in there besides Garrett Cole that you feel like, yes, when he's on the mound, is going to eat up innings. This is a recipe for disaster. They haven't changed a single thing about the offense. It's going to be strikeout, and more strikeouts. And they'll probably win between 90 and 98 games. They'll probably win the division, but when push comes to shove in October, they just don't have what it takes to get it done. The pitching is too unreliable. They can't hit elite pitching, and it's the same rinse and repeat over and over again. And this is one of the worst jobs Brian Cashman has ever done as general manager of the New York Yankees.
Okay. A lot to unpack there, Frank. I think we'll start with this. They re-signed LeMahieu, which was priority number one, regardless of anything else. Pandemic, regular season, you had to re-sign LeMahieu. They did that. So I don't think I would call this the worst offseason ever, because they did hit home with priority number one. Outside of that, you're banking on complete unknowns. And you got Sevy coming back from an injury. He's still an unknown. You got, how do you pronounce Tyson?
Jamison Tyon.
Jamison Tyon. I had to text you who he was. I had never heard of him. Corey Kluber, if he's healthy, was good about 7 years ago. When's the last time Corey Kluber has been a legitimate starting pitcher in the league, Frank? 2017? Look that up.
Yeah, it must have been 2017 because that was the year that they played the Yankees in the ALDS. They blew the 2-0 lead. So in 2017 he was 18-4 with a 2.25 ERA. In 2018 he was 20-7, and the last 2 years have basically been a complete wash.
So you're banking on a guy who wasn't very overpowering to begin with, relied on movement and control coming off 2 years of injury-plagued hell. Really. I mean, how many games did he pitch total last 2 years?
He pitched
under 20
7 games in 2019, one last year, pitched 1 inning last year. Grand total of 36 2/3 innings over the last 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, you can't bank on that. And when there's so much uncertainty elsewhere in the rotation, you feel like they would go and get at least one other guy, at least one, that they were like, hey, every 5 nights, he's going to give us something. And sometimes that something is 6 innings. Like you said, so at least give the bullpen arms a little bit of relief. Offensively, the offense was good last year. It was frustrating as hell, but it was good. So I don't hate the fact that they're kind of rolling it back, even though I would personally like to see a couple changes with some more professional hitters and fewer strikeout or home run guys. But I don't understand the rotation. Ottavino was a salary dump. They can't be done. They still have to. Is Bauer on the way? It's the only thing I'm keeping.
Bauer's going on the Mets. They cleared the room necessary by trading Steven Matz on Wednesday night. He's going to the Mets. The Mets are going to get Trevor Bauer. They're going to have a rotation led by DeGrom, Bauer, Syndergaard, and Stroman, and they're probably going to win the NL pennant because that's an elite.
That's insane. That's insane.
And hopefully that will motivate Cashman to be like, listen, we can't stand for this. And the Steinbrenner family be like, I know we lost some money during this pandemic, but this is not acceptable. We can't allow the Mets to be the class of New York City baseball. That is not New York Yankees standards at all. You cannot let that happen by any means necessary.
Are the Steinbrenners losing money on GameStop?
I don't even know what's going on with that. It makes no sense. I thought they were a dying brand for years. I feel like all their locations.
It is. I don't want to explain it to you, but they are dying, and it has nothing to do with GameStop starting to making money. It's doing with people screwing the system in a good way. Power to the people. Power to the people.
Last thing on the Yankees, Masahiro Tanaka officially going back to Japan.
It's sad.
What do you make of that?
My initial thought was they couldn't come to an agreement on a deal, and he'd rather go back to Japan than pitch anywhere else in the majors, which I respect. I don't know what kind of deal I would have given him because he was so good in the postseason and at least the 8 innings, but it's not like he was an elite pitcher on a day-to-day basis, start-to-start basis, however you want to say it. Did he want too many years than the Yankees were willing to offer? Are they being that cheap? Like, there's a chance they're just being that cheap, right? Maybe he asked for a reasonable deal and the Yankees were just like, no. But I'd much rather see him go back to Japan than go to another major league team and watch him pitch, because Tanaka has provided some memorable moments over the last 7 years for the Yankees.
I'm done with Tanaka. I think this past postseason proved that he's officially finished as like a reliable. Not that the guys I brought in are any better, but I think he's, in terms of relying on him on a day-by-day basis, he just gives up way too many home runs, and his stuff has taken a major hit. And yeah, I'll never forget when he first came up to the Yankees. His first 14 starts of the 2014 season were absurd. He was looking like Sandy Koufax. He went 11-1 with a 1.99 ERA, 113 strikeouts in 99 2/3 innings. Then he suffered a partially torn UCL, refused to undergo the surgery, and was never the same again. The final starts of that year, 2-4, 4.91 ERA, 28 strikeouts in 36 innings. I'm telling you, the biggest mistake Masahiro Tanaka made was not undergoing Tommy John surgery, and it completely ruined his tenure with the Yankees. He could have been in a Cy Young candidate year in and year out. He made the All-Star team the first year, didn't make it again until 2019. He never finished with an ERA under 3 again the rest of his career, besides that first year. That first 14-start stretch was one of the best 14-start stretches I've ever seen by a Yankee pitcher in my lifetime. And the fact
it was electric. It was the equivalent of, remember when Strasburg came up and he had that first game against Pittsburgh and had like 14 strikeouts in 7 innings, and it was must-see TV. Tanaka's first couple starts with the Yankees were must-watch television. We were at Emerson at the time. I think we watched 2 of those starts together. It was appointment TV. And when's the last time? Now we have Cole. He's must-see TV. But outside of him, when's the last time the Yankees had a guy who you had to change and rearrange your schedule to watch him start on a Wednesday night?
It was probably like Randy Johnson, or maybe when CeCe first came to the team.
Okay, CeCe, good point.
Before that, Roger Clemens would be. Speaking of, that's a great segue. So, no new players elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I've said my thoughts on the Hall of Fame for many years in a row. Bonds and Clemens are just never getting in. It is what it is. The big story here is Curt Schilling just going ape crap all over the Hall of Fame right after it. He issued a statement after he finished 16 votes short, because usually he had 70% last year, got 71% this year. You need 75% to get in. Usually, like, when you get to 70%, I feel like 100% of the time in the history of Hall of Fame voting, if you get to 70% the year before, the next year you're almost a lock to get in. And the fact that the voters they're not budging on how they feel about these guys. They're not increasing the percentages. Bonds and Clemens were basically the exact same as they were the year before. And it's just the division among the voters it's crazy, and it's a completely flawed process. But Schilling said after the fact, quote, "I will not participate in the final year of voting. I am requesting to be removed from the ballot. I'll defer to the Veterans Committee and men whose opinions actually matter and who are in a position to actually judge a player." And listen, it's crazy that we've come to a time where a player is requesting that the Hall of Fame don't even consider me. I don't want you to vote on me anymore. Like, I never thought we would reach a stage like that. The whole Veterans Committee stuff makes no sense, because Alan Traum, I believe, never got more than like 8% of the vote, and the Veterans Committee considered him a Hall of Famer. So I guess at some point in time, Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, Sosa, McGuire, they may all get in, because the Veterans Committee has a completely different thought process in the Hall of Fame voting, which and in the grand scheme of things, like, just think about this, like, that there's 2 different steps. One is the BBWA, which votes with the 10-year rule, and then there's this Veterans Committee, which no one knows how often they vote, what their procedure is.
Who it is, yeah.
And then every like 4 years or whatever, they just elect people. And there's like 5 people on that committee, and if like 3 of them think that they're Hall of Famer, then they get in. It's the least like logical thing that you'll ever have in the history of sports.
No. The least logical thing in the history of sports, and it relates to this, is Larry Walker's in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, and Barry Bonds is not.
But all right. If you're gonna compare, like, make that comparison, Harold Baines is the one.
I'm saying, but pick a million. The Baseball Hall of Fame, a couple of things. The baseball writers making videos about, like, submitting their ballot this year and how the history is in their hands. Get over yourself, dude. Tom Verducci, shut up.
That's his job. That's his job.
He just makes himself like a clown. Like, take yourself a little less seriously. 2, people who didn't even put anyone on the ballot should be stripped of ballots. There's no way you don't think anyone is vote worthy in this scenario. And then 3, we talked about this when we had our radio show. The Baseball Hall of Fame is a joke. The best players in baseball history are not in the Hall of Fame for one reason or another. And it's just a joke. Like, if you get I know you worked in Utica, and Cooperstown was a big deal for you because that was, one of the coolest events you got to cover, but the Baseball Hall of Fame is a joke, Frank. And if you get yourself worked up over it, you're working yourself over nothing, because, once again, Harold Baines and Larry Walker are in the Hall of Fame, enshrined next to the greatest baseball players to ever walk this planet, and yet Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are just names on a piece of paper.
All right, say what you want about Larry Walker. Was an elite player. He was an MVP. He was when he was at his peak, he was one of the best players in baseball. Like, don't put Larry Walker into this scrub conversation, because
he's not a scrub, but you can tell the story of baseball without including Larry Walker in that conversation. You can't tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens.
How did you come up with Larry Walker? Why is
he's just the name I saw the other day of recent guys to get in over Barry Bonds. And I was like, okay, Larry Walker was about 10% of what Barry Bonds was as a player.
I mean, when I was there, so Alan Trammell, Harold Baines.
Yeah, Baines, bum. Trammell, bum.
Right. These guys, like, they're not, like, when you think about baseball and baseball history, if you think about Harold Baines and Alan Trammell, then you need to see a therapist because those guys have nothing to do with the history of baseball. Sorry.
But if you think of, and once again, I like Larry Walker. He was great at MLB 2K7. But if you think of Larry Walker, when you think of baseball, you also need to be seeing that same therapist because he does not belong in the same breath of greatness as far as baseball goes as Barry Bonds, whether or not Bonds cheated. That's part of the game. And baseball, for a sport that loves its history more than any other sport in America, you can't just ignore the fact that this era happened. It happened. Make a steroid wing. Do whatever if you want to put a black mark above the names of people who have been associated with steroids, that's fine. Or Pete Rose for gambling. That's fine. But to not include them in the greatest of the greatest, the hall to enshrine the best baseball players ever, is just asinine. And I always tell myself, don't get worked up over it. It's stupid. And then as soon as the conversation starts and I think of Harold Baines or Larry Walker, and once again, Larry Walker is not the right one, or Al Trammell, like, it just, I get worked up and I shouldn't, and I'm sorry. It's stupid. Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens should be in the Hall of Fame. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Hall of Famers.
Just so everyone knows, Cooperstown is a magical place. If you've never been, you really should go. The people could not be. It's one of the people that live in Cooperstown are some of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life. The people that work at the Hall of Fame are incredible. They could not be any nicer. They are so generous with their time. And it's just, and I guess at the end of the day, it's a shame that that this is how the voters, that the process, and I don't blame the Hall of Fame for that because they're just sort of, the process needs to be changed. Is really what has to happen here. But last point about the Hall of Fame. So next year will be the debut on the ballot of Alexander Emmanuel Rodriguez, Mr. 3000, will debut on the ballot along with David Ortiz. And the consensus seems to be that David Ortiz will get in. May or may not be on the first ballot. I know he's got that steroid cloud over him from that 2003 test. A-Rod, obviously, one of the biggest frauds in terms of performance that the sports world has ever seen. He's up there with all the biggest cheaters, Lance Armstrong, that you could ever think of. Just what the stuff he pulled, the whole biogenesis thing. A-Rod was public enemy number one in everything that he ever did. He got a year banned from baseball. But if you just look at the stats, 696 homers, like basically in top three in every statistical category on offensive performance in the history of baseball, was the single reason why the Yankees in 2009 won the World Series. Obviously, he's like Bonds and Clemens, no doubt Hall of Fame talent, but I think Ortiz gets in, A-Rod probably doesn't, and that will piss the crap out of me.
And yes, I agree, because once again, A-Rod, you can't tell the story of baseball without Alex Rodriguez. But also, has there ever been an athlete that's been caught up in a steroid scandal in any sport that's come out as likable as A-Rod? And I think that may play into his favor next year with the voting, because Bonds still hated for steroids. Clemens still hated for steroids. Lance Armstrong made a whole documentary about how much people hate Lance Armstrong. A-Rod is everywhere. A-Rod's like, it's hard not to like this version of A-Rod, and I'm curious if the voters, if that'll play any, have any effect on how the voters view him, even though he's in that same cloud as the other steroid users, and probably worse because he lied about it, then got caught again, and then got punished severely for it. So I'm really curious to see if his recent resurrection into the public eye as a likable figure has any effect whatsoever on his voting. But he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the 10, 15 best baseball players to ever live. Like the fact, and Barry Bonds is one of the 5. So those two, I'm not going to get started again, should be in the damn Hall of Fame. Next.
From what I've gathered, it doesn't seem at all that A-Rod's renaissance since retiring from baseball and, being on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball and being on Fox's World Series coverage and being on Shark Tank and nearly becoming the new owner of the Mets, none of that is going to matter to the voters who are, and then the grand scheme with A-Rod, I mean, if you have any, real views in life, you see right through him, because he is the master he's a master at creating this perception that he is a great person and that, listen, I mean, I don't know him personally, but he's a fraud. He's been a fraud his whole career. He had the audacity in 2007 to say, Katie Couric, which is a clip that will live in infamy, A-Rod, have you ever used performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, human growth hormone? And then he sits there and says, no. And then after he made his confession before the 2009 season that he used steroids, and they said, I'm sorry, I'll never make that mistake again. The next year, he starts biogenesis. I mean, the dude has just the worst track record when it comes to this stuff, and you're crazy if you just think that this guy has turned a corner and you're a believer in like the new A-Rod, the new fresh A-Rod. Like that.
I like the new A-Rod. I think he's a really likable dude. Do I think he's a great person per se? I don't know him, but it doesn't mean I don't like him. You liked him when he was using steroids on the Yankees. I like him now, whether or not he's using steroids. So next topic, NFL baseball. Let's talk a little Super Bowl preview.
All right, so let's talk about the championship games real quick. We'll start in the NFC at Tom freaking Brady. 10th Super Bowl appearance, made 18% of the Super Bowls ever played. It's just silly. And if he wins this, I mean, you put him in the same conversation as Bill Russell, Tiger Woods, Michael Phelps. He is, if not already the greatest athlete of all time, then the debate is over. If he does this year at the age of 43 to win 7 Super Bowls, to do it with a second team, to be able to do it
in the first year with that second team too.
I mean, that would just be the cherry on top of the greatest Hall of Fame career talent that the sports world has ever seen. Sorry, Michael Jordan. I mean, nothing would top this. This is something that we will never see again. And I think this year proves that. Sorry, Bill Belichick. This was Tom Brady from start to finish, and I bet you Bill Belichick is just boiling right now because he never get if Belichick doesn't get to another like championship game without Brady, then the debate is over. It's Brady.
Yeah, if that does happen, then yes, it's Brady. But to say if Brady wins this, the debate is over, that's just an unfair, ridiculous statement because part of the reason Brady left was that roster stunk without him. And clearly we saw them take a massive step back without Tom Brady. He had to deal with Jarrett Stidham and Cam Newton, neither of which could throw the ball more than 7 yards accurately downfield, which handcuffs you offensively. There was a point when the Patriots were making their playoff push that people were saying this was Belichick's greatest coaching job ever to even have this team at 5-5 or 4-5 or 5-6, whatever it was, and be in playoff contention. So yeah, if Brady wins, I do agree. While this would be a massive FU to New England and that whole organization, and it would also be the trump card as far as GOAT debates across all sports to do it on a second team. Now we've seen LeBron do it on 3 teams, but as far as football, it's a little different in football. But yeah, this would be unbelievable. Like to do this, I didn't think in my wildest dreams this would actually be a possibility.
So let's talk about all right. So Brady threw interceptions on 3 straight drives in the fourth quarter. He was practically begging the Packers, please don't let me do this. Please don't let me do this. And Matt LaFleur was just like, you know what? We're gonna let you do this because we're gonna kick a field goal with 2 minutes and 5 seconds to go in the game, down by 8 points, and we're not gonna get the ball back and we're gonna lose. By the way, when that happened, I said to a coworker, I said, kick a field goal here, right? As like jokingly. And he thought I was like the most absurd, just added like craziest thing he's ever heard. And then I turn around at the TV and I see Mason Crosby trotting onto the field. It was pure theater.
So you jinxed it. You brought out the field goal unit. That was you. Green Bay should be mad at you.
I said it like there's no way they're gonna kick the field goal. There's no way they can't possibly kick the field goal here. And then
I disagree with the field goal call too. Just because no matter what, you needed a stop and another touchdown. Regardless of make, miss, get it or not on 4th down, you needed a stop and another touchdown to win the game. So I know the analytics said it gave them a slightly higher percentage chance to win, but I go for that every time. You just don't take the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands that close to the goal line with a chance to tie the game. I think it could be simplified to as much as that. I think Rodgers should have tried and run on third down. I don't think he would have scored, but at least it would have set up a closer 4th and goal situation. And then to take it out of his hands when you needed to stop and a score anyway, I won't agree with that. I just won't.
So Rodgers has since clarified his comments that he made after the game that he wasn't sure whether he'd be back or not. Seems like he will be back. I'll be shocked if he wasn't back in Green Bay. In the AFC, the Chiefs, they fell behind 9-0. Did you have any doubt at any point in that game they weren't going to win?
I swear to you, if my phone was charging on Sunday, it didn't charge overnight on Saturday, which is a hand up my bad. But I wanted to text you and be like, "What's the live line on live?"
The highest the money line got was -105. They were never plus money. It never got
even down 9.
Yeah, it never. And I think they've been burned too many times by this, and they weren't going to budge.
I was gonna text you and ask because I was close when I said Pittsburgh was gonna come back and win when the money line was like plus 600 or whatever. They probably should have actually won that game, but I did almost text you and ask. No, I was never worried. No, I told you going into the game, Kansas City has a notch that no one else in the league can touch, and when they want to play like that, which they should have scored the first drive. Tyreek Hill dropped a beautiful pass from Mahomes for about 40 yards. They punt. They get a stop. Hardman fumbles, and then it's 9-0 before you know it. But then the rest of the game, it was Kansas City with ease. The game never, even down 9, it never felt like the Kansas City Chiefs were in any sort of trouble, which is a testament to how good they are and how dominant they can be for stretches of the game. I think it hurts that Fisher's out, obviously, because Tampa Bay has 2 pretty good rush ends in Barrett and JPP. But as good as Brady is right now.
So it looks like we just. Well, I'm getting your internet connection is unstable message. I don't know if that's coming from me or you, but either way.
That's for you. If it says it, it's for you.
Okay. Real quick, before we go, line is Chiefs -3.
Chiefs, easy money. You could not get me to bet against Mahomes right now for anything. I understand Brady's Brady, and if Tampa Bay wins or they cover, I'll say, you know what? Brady is the GOAT, and I understand that, but I'm not betting against Mahomes. I'm just not. And Brady did not look good for half that game. I mean, the Scotty Miller late touchdown was a coverage disaster. It was a great throw, but that was just horribly designed defensive scheme. And Kevin King, what are you doing? And then he threw those 3 interceptions in the second half. 2 of the throws were not good. One of them was not necessarily his fault, but 2 of those throws were just not good. I'm taking Mahomes. I don't know how you stop this offense, even without your 2 starting tackles.
I have a philosophy in life. It reads, anytime you get Patrick Mahomes for a field goal or less in a game, you bet it every single time because he's the greatest most talented quarterback I've ever seen. And if you have the ability to get him to win by at least a field goal, and you better take it every single freaking time. And
I'm not betting against Mahomes. Brady's the GOAT. I'm not betting against Mahomes. Straight up. End of story. I'm not.
That'll do it for this episode of the Lucas Podcast. You know where to find me at Lucas Frankel. You know where to find him at Cags Lucas. Maybe by the time we do this next week, Mahomes will be on the New York Football Jets, and we're going to break down why they'll win the Super Bowl next year. See you guys next week.